The waiting room went silent when my mother saw my name stitched across my surgical coat. Not whispered silent. The kind of silence that feels physical, like air leaving the room. She stood halfway up from a plastic hospital chair, hand covering her mouth. "Emily!" My father didn't stand. He just stared at me like he was looking at a ghost that had learned how to breathe again. Behind them, a nurse rushed past pushing a trauma cart, wheels rattling against tile. Monitors beeped somewhere down the hall. Someone was crying near the vending machines. But my parents weren't looking at any of that. They were looking at me, the daughter they hadn't spoken to in 5 years, the daughter they told everyone had dropped out of medical school, the daughter they said had given up on her future. And now I was standing in front of them wearing navy scrubs, surgical cap in hand, badge clipped to my chest. My mother's voice trembled. You work here?" I didn't answer immediately, because through the trauma bay doors behind me a nurse called, "Doctor, we're losing her pressure." Her, my sister, Lena. The same sister whose lie erased me from my own family. I looked back at my parents, then at the chart in my hand, then back at them, and calmly said, "I'm her surgeon." My father finally stood. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "No," he said quickly, "get someone else." I met his eyes for the first time in 5 years. "There isn't someone else," I told him. "I'm the attending on call." My mother started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet panic. And as alarms sounded down the hall, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even nervous. I felt clear. Because 5 years earlier, these same people had chosen a lie over me. Tonight, their daughter's life depended on the truth they never bothered to hear. I turned toward the trauma doors and walked in. Here's the part that confused everyone later. My parents weren't shocked just because I became a surgeon. They were shocked because, according to them, I had never even finished school. They truly believed I quit. They believed I failed. They believed I walked away from medicine out of laziness. And the strange thing, they didn't invent that story. Someone told them. Someone they trusted more than me. My sister Lena. The same sister now unconscious on my operating table. The same sister whose voice had slowly rewritten my entire life behind my back. And the real question wasn't just why she lied. The question was, why did my parents never once ask me if it was true? Why did they cut me off so easily? And why, months before that lie exploded, had they already started taking money from me without my knowledge? Because the night everything fell apart wasn't actually about medical school. It started with an inheritance, and a decision I made quietly. A decision that saved me. Before I take you back there, I want to pause for a second. If you're listening right now, maybe while cooking, driving, or winding down for the night, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always read them, and honestly, knowing where these stories reach makes this feel less like talking into the void. And if stories about family betrayal, quiet resilience, and truth finally surfacing resonate with you, consider subscribing. Because sometimes healing doesn't start with justice. Sometimes it starts with finally being heard. Okay, let me take you back to the moment my family stopped being my family. 5 years before the ER. I was 26, living at home in Connecticut while finishing my final year of medical school rotations. My life was structured. Wake up at 4:45 am, hospital by 6. Study until midnight. Repeat. I wasn't glamorous. I wasn't social. I barely dated, but I was focused. My parents liked telling people I was the responsible one. My younger sister Lena, 2 years younger, was the opposite. She was magnetic, funny, emotional, always in some kind of crisis that pulled attention toward her. And growing up, that dynamic never felt unfair. It just was. At dinner one night, my mom passed the salad bowl and smiled at Lena. "So what did your manager say about the promotion?" Lena sighed dramatically. "He says I need stability, like I can control layoffs." Dad nodded sympathetically. "You've had bad luck." I sat quietly eating chicken, half reading notes on my tablet. My mom glanced at me. "How are rotations?" "Good," I said. "Trauma week starts Monday." "That sounds exhausting," she said gently. It wasn't dismissive, just brief. Conversation drifted back to Lena's workplace drama. I remember noticing it, not resentment, just awareness. She filled emotional space. I filled expectations. And honestly, I was okay with that, because I believed my family supported me. Then my grandmother died, and everything shifted. Grandma Evelyn had always been precise. She didn't trust chaos. She documented everything. When the lawyer read the will, he looked directly at me. "Emily, your grandmother established an education fund in your name." My mother squeezed my hand proudly. "That sounds like her," the lawyer continued. "The remaining balance, $72,000, is designated exclusively for medical education expenses." I felt relieved more than excited. Medical school debt terrified me. This meant freedom, security, breathing room. Afterward, Lena hugged me tightly. "That's amazing," she said. "You deserve it." And I believed her. I truly did. 3 weeks later, my parents asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. My dad folded his hands. "We want to talk about Lena." My stomach tightened immediately. Mom spoke gently. "She's struggling financially. Rent, medical bills, credit cards." Lena stared at the table, eyes glossy. "I hate asking," she whispered. Dad cleared his throat. "Family helps family." I nodded slowly. "What do you need?" Mom smiled, relieved too quickly. "Just a temporary loan from your education fund." Something inside me paused. "That money is restricted," I said carefully. Dad waved a hand. "We'll replace it before tuition is due." Lena reached across the table. "I'd do it for you." Silence stretched. I looked at all three of them. Their faces already assumed agreement. And that's when I felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, pressure. I swallowed. "I'll think about it." It was the first time I hadn't immediately said yes. And I remember my father's expression changing, just slightly, like disappointment mixed with surprise. Internal shift. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Something didn't sit right. Grandma had been specific about that money. She'd told me once, "Education is the one thing no one can take from you." I opened my banking app. The account showed multiple authorized viewers, my parents, created years earlier when I was still in undergrad. I stared at the permissions. A strange thought formed. What if they didn't see it as mine? What if they saw it as family money? That thought stayed with me. And 5 weeks later, I quietly met with a lawyer. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and old paper. He adjusted his glasses while reviewing the trust documents. "Your grandmother was very clear," he said. "These funds legally belong to you." I nodded. "My parents think they can access it." He raised an eyebrow. "They can view it, not withdraw unless authorization exists." I hesitated. "What if I remove access?" He smiled slightly. "Then it becomes exclusively yours. Perfectly legal." I remember feeling guilty even asking, like I was betraying my own family. But another voice inside me whispered, "Protect yourself." So I did. I transferred the funds into a protected account under Connecticut fiduciary law. Changed permissions, locked access, everything legal, everything documented, and I told no one. For 5 weeks, life went on normally. Dinner conversations, casual laughter, my mother asking about exams, Lena complaining about work. Nothing seemed different, until one evening. 9:02 p.m. I had just hugged my mom goodnight after another conversation about helping Lena financially. "I know you'll do the right thing," she said warmly. I went upstairs, sat on my bed, my phone lit up. Security alert, unauthorized access attempt account login attempt denied. User David Carter, my father, attempting access. While I was still in the house, my stomach dropped. I refreshed the alert. Another attempt. Denied. Another. Denied. I sat perfectly still, listening to footsteps downstairs, hearing cabinet doors open, murmured voices. They weren't waiting for my decision. They were trying to take it anyway. And in that moment, something inside me changed permanently. Downstairs, my father's voice rose sharply. "Why can't I access it?" Mom sounded confused. "Try again." I did. I walked slowly into the kitchen. 3 heads turned toward me. Lena looked nervous. Dad held his phone tightly. "Emily," he said, "did you change something?" I kept my voice calm. "Yes." Silence. Mom frowned. "Why?" "Because the money is legally mine." Lena's expression shifted instantly, hurt replacing nervousness. "So you don't trust us?" I took a breath. "It's not about trust." Dad's tone hardened. "Family doesn't lock family out." And that was the first moment I realized. They weren't asking. They felt entitled. The argument that followed would end my place in that house. It would trigger the lie that erased me. And it would start a 5-year silence that only ended when my sister's life depended on me. But what I didn't know yet was that the money wasn't the real betrayal. Because while protecting my inheritance, I was about to discover something far worse. Something my parents and sister had been doing quietly for 12 years. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. My father was still holding his phone when I said I'd removed access. The kitchen light felt too bright. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly loud. Nobody sat down. Nobody blinked. Dad spoke first. "You changed the account without telling us." His voice wasn't angry yet. It was worse, controlled. "Yes," I said. Mom folded her arms slowly. "Emily, why would you do that?" "Because you were trying to withdraw money behind my back." I didn't say it immediately. I watched Lena instead. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That detail stayed with me. "I received security alerts," I said carefully. "Someone tried accessing the account tonight." Dad's jaw tightened. "Well, yes," he said. "I was checking something." Checking, not asking, checking. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "That account is restricted to my education expenses," I said. "Grandma made that clear." Lena scoffed softly. "So now we're stealing from you?" "I didn't say that. You implied it." Her voice cracked perfectly, emotional, wounded, convincing. I'd seen her do that before with teachers, boyfriends, managers. Shift the narrative before facts could settle. Mom immediately turned toward me. "Emily, your sister is struggling." "I know. And you have money sitting there." "It's tuition money." Dad's voice hardened. "You can work. It builds character." The sentence landed heavier than he probably intended, because in that moment I understood something I hadn't before. They had already decided what my role was: reliable daughter, sacrificial daughter, backup resource. I inhaled slowly. "I'm not giving access back." Silence. Then Lena pushed her chair back loudly. "Wow," she shook her head. "I didn't realize money mattered more to you than family." And that was the moment the fight truly started. Mom's voice sharpened. "We are not strangers asking you for help." "I didn't say you were." "Then why treat us like criminals?" Dad stepped closer. "You embarrassed me tonight." I blinked. "How?" "At the bank," he said. "They told me I no longer had authorization. Do you know how that looks?" Something inside me snapped quietly. Not anger, clarity. "So you went to the bank," I said slowly. He hesitated. Mom looked confused. "You went in person," Dad exhaled. "I was trying to help Lena quickly." Help, without telling me, without permission. Lena crossed her arms. "You're acting like we betrayed you." I heard myself answer calmly. "You tried to move money that wasn't yours." Her eyes filled instantly with tears. "There it is," she whispered. "You think I'm a thief." Mom turned toward me sharply. "Apologize." I stared at her. For the first time in my life, I didn't move to fix the tension. "I'm not apologizing," I said quietly. The air changed. Dad's voice dropped low. "If you're going to behave like this, maybe you should reconsider living here." The sentence hung there. I realized he meant it. And strangely, I felt relief. Standing there, I noticed small details I'd ignored for years. The way Lena stood slightly behind our parents when conflict started. The way Mom defended emotion over facts. The way Dad framed control as responsibility. I thought, maybe this wasn't sudden. Maybe this had always existed. I had just been too busy working toward my future to see it. Lena spoke again, softer now. "I just needed help." I nodded. "I would have helped in ways that didn't jeopardize my education." She laughed bitterly. "Right, because your career matters more than anything else." That accusation hit deeper than she knew. Because medicine wasn't ego for me, it was survival, security, identity. Mom sighed dramatically. "This isn't who you were raised to be." I swallowed. "No," I said gently, "it's who I became." Dad pointed toward the stairs. "If you're choosing money over family," he paused, "then maybe you should start acting independent." There it was, the unofficial eviction. I nodded once. "Okay," Mom blinked. "Emily, I'll move out." The words surprised even me. Lena's crying stopped instantly. She hadn't expected that outcome. Neither had I, but once said it felt inevitable. I packed quietly. Suitcases open on my bed. The house felt unfamiliar already. Downstairs, I heard muffled conversation. My name, fragments of sentences. Ungrateful. Changed. Medical school stress. I sat on the edge of my mattress thinking, why does protecting myself feel like betrayal? At 11:30 p.m., Mom knocked lightly. She entered without waiting. You don't have to leave tonight. Her voice sounded tired. I think I should. She sat beside me. This is just a misunderstanding. I wanted to believe that. I really did, but the security alerts replayed in my mind. You tried to move the money without asking, I said quietly. Her expression tightened. We were going to tell you. When? She didn't answer. Instead, she said something that changed everything. Your sister needs us more right now. Not you both. Not we'll figure this out. Just her. I nodded slowly. I understand. And I did. I finally understood my position in the family hierarchy. I hugged her. She hugged me back, but it felt like goodbye. I moved into a tiny studio apartment 2 days later. Mattress on the floor. Second-hand desk. Coffee maker that sounded like a lawn mower. I expected tension to cool. I expected someone to call. They didn't. Instead, 3 weeks later, a classmate approached me after rounds. Hey, she said cautiously. Are you okay? Yeah. Why? She hesitated. I heard you withdrew from the program. My stomach dropped. What? She frowned. Lena told someone at church you dropped out, said the stress was too much. The hallway suddenly felt narrow. That's not true. I figured, she said quickly. But people are talking. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, because my brain couldn't process it yet. Why would she say that? I called Lena immediately. She answered cheerfully. Hey, why are you telling people I dropped out of med school? Silence, then a sigh. I didn't say that exactly. What did you say? I said you were reconsidering things. That's not true. Well, she said defensively, you moved out and stopped talking to us. I didn't stop talking. Nobody called me. She ignored that. I was just explaining the situation. What situation? Her tone hardened. The situation where you chose money over family. I felt my hands shake. So now I failed medical school? You're twisting my words. No, I said quietly. You are, she hung up. And that was the moment the narrative escaped my control. Within weeks, relatives stopped responding. Church acquaintances avoided eye contact. An aunt texted, we're praying for you during this difficult time. Difficult time, like I'd ruined my own future. I called my parents. Dad answered. Hi, I said carefully. There's a rumor I dropped out. He sighed heavily. We're very disappointed, Emily. My heart pounded. I didn't drop out. Well, he said, that's not what Lena told us. You didn't ask me. Pause long enough to hurt. We trusted your sister. Those 5 words ended something inside me. Emotional reflection. I sat in my apartment staring at the wall. 5 years of effort, sacrifice, sleep deprivation, reduced to a story someone else invented. And my parents never verified it. Not once. I realized then, this wasn't misunderstanding. It was convenience. Believing Lena required no confrontation. Believing me required none either because I would survive. A month later, while organizing finances for tuition payments, I reviewed old statements tied to the education account. Something looked strange. Small withdrawals, not recent. Old, years old. $300, $450, $120, scattered across time. I scrolled further back. My breathing slowed. These withdrawals dated back 12 years, when I was still a teenager, authorized under parental access. I opened spreadsheets, added totals, checked confirmations, rechecked math. The final number stared back at me, $13,850 gone, taken gradually, quietly, before I ever had control. My hands went cold. This wasn't about Lena needing help recently. They had been using my money for years. And suddenly, everything made sense. The entitlement, the anger when access disappeared, the urgency. They weren't losing opportunity. They were losing control. I called my father again. He answered on speaker. Mom and Lena were clearly there. I reviewed the account history, I said calmly. Silence. Then Dad said, okay. There are withdrawals totaling nearly $14,000 before I turned 21. Mom spoke quickly. That was family expenses. My education fund paid family expenses. You lived here, Dad said sharply. Food, utilities, that money was legally restricted. Lena jumped in. You're seriously auditing your own parents? I ignored her. Did you ever intend to tell me? Dad's patience broke. We raised you and took my inheritance. The room went quiet. Then he said the sentence I will never forget. If you're going to accuse us, maybe you shouldn't be part of this family. Click. Call ended. Just like that, I was cut off. Officially. That night I understood two truths. My sister's lie erased me socially. My parents chose the version of me that required no accountability from them. I stopped defending myself. I stopped explaining. And quietly, I began building a life they would never see. A life that would eventually lead me back to them, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as the only person who could save Lena's life. Because 5 years later, when those ER doors opened, they weren't just facing the daughter they abandoned. They were facing the consequences of believing a lie. After that phone call ended, I stopped trying to fix things. No long explanations, no emotional texts, no defending myself, because something had finally clicked. If people want the truth, they ask. My parents didn't ask. They accepted a version of me that required zero effort from them, so I disappeared quietly. Medical residency isn't dramatic the way TV shows make it look. It's fluorescent lights at 3 a.m. cold coffee, sleeping in scrubs, learning to function while emotionally exhausted. Most residents complained about missing holidays. I didn't, because there was nowhere left to go. During orientation, another resident asked me casually, "So what did your family do when you matched into trauma?" I smiled politely. They were busy. I learned quickly to keep answers short. Less explanation meant less pain. Sometimes I wondered if my parents ever Googled me. My graduation announcements were public. Hospital newsletters listed incoming residents. My name existed everywhere, but they never reached out. And that silence told me something heavier than anger ever could. They weren't confused. They were convinced. About 6 months into residency, I received an unexpected message from my cousin Rachel. We hadn't spoken since the fallout. Her text read, "I ran into your mom today. She said you left school. I didn't know what to say." My stomach tightened again. Still, after all this time, I called her. "Rachel, what exactly did she say?" Rachel hesitated. "She said Lena helped you withdraw, that you were struggling mentally." I sat down slowly on a hospital bench. "Helped me withdraw?" "Yeah," Rachel said carefully. "She said Lena handled paperwork because you weren't in a good place." The hallway noise faded around me. That wasn't just gossip anymore. That was a constructed story. "Rachel," I asked quietly, "did they show you anything?" Pause. "Actually, yes." My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" "They had emails, documents. Something from the university." I felt the world tilt slightly. "What kind of documents?" She hesitated again. "Withdrawal confirmation, academic notice, it looked official." My mouth went dry. "I never withdrew." "I figured," she said quickly. "But it looked real, Real, that word echoed. Because suddenly everything made horrifying sense. My parents hadn't just believed Lena blindly. They believed evidence, fake evidence. I hung up and sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes. Hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, trying to reconstruct reality. Lena hadn't simply lied. She had built a narrative, documents, emails, proof, which meant planning. Time, intent. This wasn't emotional exaggeration. This was calculated. And the question hit me like ice water. Why would my sister go that far? I contacted my medical school registrar the next morning. "Hi," I said. "I need to verify whether anyone has requested withdrawal documentation under my name." Keyboard typing echoed through the phone. "No withdrawal requests exist," the administrator said. "You graduated in good standing. Has anyone accessed my academic records?" Another pause. "Yes," she said. "An information request was submitted years ago under family authorization." My stomach dropped. Family authorization. Before I removed account permissions. Before boundaries existed. Someone had gathered real institutional formatting. Real headers. Real templates. Enough to create believable forgeries. I remembered Lena sitting beside me years earlier asking innocent questions. What's your school email format again? What do those letters after professors' names mean? At the time, I thought she was just curious. Now those memories felt different, like puzzle pieces rearranging themselves. I called my mother again, straight to voicemail. I left a message anyway. Mom, I know Lena showed you documents saying I dropped out. Those were fake. Please call me back, I can prove it. No response. I sent copies of my enrollment verification. Residency acceptance letter, hospital ID photo, read receipts appeared. No reply. That silence hurt more than the lie. Because now they had evidence from me too, and still chose hers. Over the next year, I learned how complete reputation damage can be. Family weddings happened without invitations. Holiday photos appeared online. My name vanished from conversations. One aunt told a mutual friend, "It's sad. Emily had so much potential." Potential, like I was already gone. And slowly, I stopped trying to resurrect myself in their world. Instead, I built a new one. Residency hardened me in good ways. I became calm under pressure, precise, observant, detached when necessary. I met Daniel during my 3rd year. He was an ER physician, not dramatic, not overly curious. He noticed things quietly. One night after shift, he asked, "Do you ever talk about your family?" I shrugged. "They believe I dropped out of med school," he blinked. "While you're literally working here." "Yep." He waited, didn't rush to fix it, didn't offer cliches, just said softly, "That must feel lonely." And for the first time in years, I felt seen. We married in a small courthouse ceremony. 2 witnesses, no parents, no sister. I told myself I didn't care. Most days I believed it. Years passed. And gradually, I understood something uncomfortable. Lena's lie worked because it fit an emotional story my parents already believed. She struggled, so needed protection. I succeeded, so needed less attention. If I failed, it restored balance. Her crisis remained central. Their parenting choices remained justified. The lie didn't challenge their worldview. It protected it. And that realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. The night everything returned 5 years later, I was halfway through a night shift when the trauma pager went off. Multiple vehicle collision, female, critical. Standard call. I grabbed gloves, walked into trauma bay 3. The patient arrived seconds later. Blood, broken glass in hair, unconscious. Nurse reading vitals rapidly. I scanned the chart automatically. Name entered by paramedics, Lena Carter. Time slowed. My brain registered details clinically first. Internal bleeding, collapsed lung, severe head trauma, my sister. The room moved around me. Someone asked, "Doctor?" I heard my own voice respond professionally. "Prep for surgery." No hesitation, no emotion allowed. Because in trauma surgery, you don't get to process feelings first. You save the patient. As I scrubbed in, a strange calm settled over me. 5 years of silence. 5 years of being erased. And now fate placed her life in my hands. Not revenge, not justice. Responsibility. I thought, this is the first time my family will see the truth without words. The waiting room revelation. After stabilizing her for surgery, I stepped into the waiting area. And that's when I saw them. My parents, older, smaller somehow. My mother stood immediately. Then she saw my badge. Confusion hit first, then recognition, then shock. "Emily!" My father stared like reality had broken. You work here?" I nodded. "I'm the trauma surgeon." Mom shook her head weakly. "But Lena said..." She stopped herself. I finished gently. "She said I dropped out." Silence filled the room. Dad whispered, almost to himself, "She showed us emails." I met his eyes calmly. "They were fake." Mom sat down slowly, hands trembling. "We believed her." I nodded once. "I know." No anger, no accusation, just truth. And for the first time, I saw doubt enter their understanding of the past 5 years. But the real shock hadn't happened yet. Because while preparing Lena for surgery, a nurse handed me her personal belongings. Phone, wallet, purse. Inside the purse was a folded envelope labeled EMILY, my name, written in Lena's handwriting. And suddenly I realized the accident hadn't brought the truth back into my life. Lena had been planning to contact me before the crash, before the ER, before fate forced us together again. Whatever was inside that envelope was about to explain why she destroyed my life in the first place. The trauma hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt coffee. A nurse handed me Lena's belongings inside a clear hospital bag. "Doctor, personal effects," she said. I nodded automatically. Routine. I'd done this hundreds of times, but then I saw it. A cream-colored envelope folded neatly inside her purse. One word written across it. Emily. My chest tightened. Not Dr. Carter, not Sis, just my name. My hands hesitated for the first time that night. Behind me, monitors beeped steadily from nearby rooms. Someone laughed at the nurse's station. A janitor's cart rolled past, wheels squeaking. Normal hospital sounds, completely disconnected from the emotional gravity sitting in my hands. I told myself, you open it after surgery, but curiosity pressed harder. 5 years of silence lived inside that envelope. I stepped into an empty consult room, closed the door, and opened it. Inside the letter, several papers slid onto the table. Not just a letter, documents, printed emails, screenshots, bank statements, and a handwritten note on top. My sister's handwriting, slightly slanted, rushed. "Emily, if you're reading this, it means I finally worked up the courage to find you. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve you to read this. But Mom and Dad need to know the truth." I lied. I stopped breathing for a second, even though I already knew. Seeing her admit it felt different. Real. Heavy. I sat down slowly. The letter continued. "I told them you dropped out of medical school. I created emails using templates from your university website. I changed dates, signatures, headers, everything." My hands trembled slightly, not from anger, from confirmation, every missing piece falling into place. "I thought it would be temporary. I thought you'd come back and explain everything. But you never did." I whispered aloud to the empty room. "You never let me." Suddenly, I remembered our last phone call years ago, her saying, "You chose money over family." At the time, it sounded emotional. Now it felt strategic. She wasn't reacting. She was constructing a narrative. I turned the page, and this was where the story shifted again. I was drowning financially. Not just debt. I owed people money I couldn't repay. I frowned. Lena had never mentioned serious debt. She continued, "I told Mom and Dad you weren't finishing school so they wouldn't expect you to repay Grandma's fund or succeed before me." I stared at the sentence. Read it twice, 3 times. She hadn't just protected herself. She had tried to level the emotional playing field. If I failed, she didn't have to feel behind. My chest tightened, not with rage, but understanding mixed with grief. Another page slipped loose. Financial statements, loans, collections notices, and then one document stamped in red, cautioned by my father. My pulse accelerated. Lena wrote, "Dad secretly used part of your education fund over the years to help me. He said you'd understand when you were older." The room went completely quiet. This wasn't just Lena's manipulation anymore. This connected directly to the missing $13,850. The theft, the entitlement, the secrecy. She continued, "When you locked the account, everything collapsed. They panicked. I panicked, so I told the lie." I leaned back slowly. The fight in the kitchen replayed in my head. Dad's anger, Mom's disappointment, their urgency. They weren't reacting to selfishness. They were reacting to exposure. A strange calm washed over me. For 5 years, I wondered why they chose her story so easily. Now I knew, because believing her protected them too. If I had dropped out, then no one had to explain the money. No one had to confront what they'd done. The lie wasn't just hers. It became a family survival mechanism. A knock sounded. "Dr. Carter?" I quickly gathered the papers. "Yes. We're ready for surgery," reality snapped back. "Patient first, always." I slid the envelope into my locker, took one deep breath, and walked toward the operating room. Bright lights, sterile blue drapes, the rhythm of machines steady and clinical. Lena lay unconscious beneath surgical lights. For a moment, she didn't look like my sister, just another trauma patient. I spoke automatically. "Scalpel," nurse passed it. "BP, dropping, let's move." My hands worked from years of training, precise, detached. But somewhere beneath the professional calm, thoughts moved quietly. She lied. She destroyed my life. and she still came looking for me. I realized something then. She hadn't written the letter expecting forgiveness. She wrote it because she finally couldn't carry the truth alone. Resident beside me asked softly, "Doctor, you okay?" I nodded. "Focus on suction." He hesitated. "That's your family out there, right?" "Yes." Pause. "You want another attending?" I shook my head. "No, we finish what we start." The words surprised me, because I wasn't talking only about surgery. Complication hit 40 minutes in, unexpected internal bleeding. Monitors alarmed loudly. "Pressure crashing!" The room shifted instantly into crisis mode. This was the moment surgeons train for, pure instinct, no emotion allowed. I stabilized the vessel, controlled bleeding, worked methodically. And after what felt like hours, vitals stabilized. The room exhaled collectively. "Good save," anesthesia murmured. I stepped back slightly, gloves stained, heart steady. My sister was alive. While washing my hands afterward, I stared at my reflection. 5 years earlier, I left my parents' house feeling erased. Tonight, I saved the person who erased me. Not revenge, not justice, just reality. And strangely, I felt free, because the truth no longer needed defending. It existed, undeniable. My parents stood the moment I entered. Mom rushed forward. "How is she?" "She's stable," I said calmly. "Surgery went well." She cried openly now. Dad looked shaken. He swallowed. "Thank you." The words sounded unfamiliar coming from him. I sat across from them. For the first time since seeing them, I spoke deliberately. "There's something you need to know." They both listened carefully. "Lena wrote me a letter." Dad's shoulders stiffened. Mom whispered, "A letter?" "Yes," I paused. "She admitted she fabricated the withdrawal documents." Silence. Dad shook his head slowly. "No, she wouldn't." I placed copies of the printed emails from the envelope onto the table. "These are templates taken from my university website." Mom covered her mouth. Dad stared at the pages, hands trembling slightly. Then I said the second truth. "The missing money from my education fund, she confirmed you used it to help her." The words landed quietly, but heavily. Dad didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, he sat down, looking smaller than I remembered. "We thought you'd understand someday." I nodded. "I would have, if you'd told me." Mom started crying harder. "We didn't know how." And that was the first honest sentence I'd heard from them in years. But the story still wasn't finished, because Lena would wake up soon. And when she did, the truth wouldn't stay inside hospital walls. Relatives, friends, the entire social circle that believed I failed. They were about to learn what really happened, not through anger, not through revenge, but through calm exposure. And for the first time in 5 years, my parents were about to face the story they helped create. Hospitals at sunrise feel strangely peaceful. Night chaos fades. Day staff arrive quietly. Coffee smells stronger than antiseptic. I checked Lena's chart before entering her room. Vitals stable, neurological response improving. She was going to live. I paused outside the door longer than necessary. 5 years of silence sat on the other side. I reminded myself, "You are her surgeon first." I walked in. Monitors beeped softly. Lena's eyes fluttered open as I adjusted the IV line. She squinted, confused, then focused. Recognition hit slowly. "Emily?" Her voice was dry, barely audible. I nodded once. "Yes." Her eyes filled immediately. "You're here. I'm your surgeon." Tears slipped down her temples. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Machines filled the silence. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't think you'd come." I answered honestly. "I didn't come as your sister." That hurt her. I saw it, but it was the truth. Dialogue, first honest conversation. She swallowed painfully. "You read the letter?" "Yes." Her breathing became uneven. "I ruined everything." I stayed calm. "You created a lie." She closed her eyes. "I thought it would protect me." "From what?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "From being the disappointment." The words hung in the room. I pulled a chair closer. "You were never competing with me." She laughed weakly. "You don't understand. Every family gathering, every conversation, it was always Emily's doing amazing." I thought back. I had never noticed it as pressure, only expectation. She continued, "When you locked the account, Dad panicked. The debt collectors were calling. He said if you graduated, questions would start about the money. My stomach tightened. So you made sure I didn't graduate, at least publicly. She nodded slowly. I thought you'd fight back. I met her eyes. I did, you just weren't listening. Tears rolled again. I didn't realize how far it went until nobody talked about you anymore. That sentence landed harder than anything else, because it confirmed what I'd felt all along. I hadn't just been lied about. I'd been erased. Emotional reflection standing there, I noticed something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore, not because what she did was small, but because I had already survived its consequences. The lie shaped my life, but it didn't destroy it. And in this room, power felt different than revenge. It felt quiet, stable, untouchable. The my parents knocked softly before entering. They looked uncertain. Like guests visiting someone else's family, Mom approached Lena first. Oh, honey, Dad stayed near the door, avoiding my eyes. Lena looked between all of us. I told her everything, she said weakly. Mom's face crumpled. We know. Silence filled the room. Then Dad turned toward me, his voice rough. We need to fix this. I shook my head gently. You can't fix 5 years. He nodded slowly. I know. And for the first time, he didn't argue. Retention reset, the public reckoning begins 2 weeks later, Lena was discharged. Recovery was slow but steady. During that time, my parents asked something unexpected. They wanted a family dinner, not private, extended family included, aunts, cousins, people who believed the lie. Mom said quietly on the phone, they deserve to know the truth. I understood what she meant, not justice. Correction, social reality had to reset, and strangely I agreed. The gathering happened at my parents' house, the same kitchen where everything began. Walking through the door felt surreal. Same table, same light fixtures, but I was no longer the daughter asking permission to exist. I arrived with Daniel, my husband. My parents froze slightly when they saw him. Mom whispered, "You're married?" "Yes," I said calmly. Dad looked stunned. "When?" 3 years ago. Another consequence of believing a lie, they missed my wedding. No anger needed. Reality spoke louder. Environment shift voices filled the living room. Relatives chatting, dishes clinking. Then conversations slowly quieted as people noticed me. Whispers started. "That's Emily." I thought. Confusion moved through the room like a ripple. Mom stood, hands shaking slightly. "We asked everyone here tonight because something important needs to be corrected." She looked at Lena. Lena nodded weakly from her chair. Then Mom said it. "Emily never dropped out of medical school." Complete silence. Someone laughed nervously, but Mom continued. "The documents we showed many of you were false." All eyes moved toward Lena. She spoke next. "I made them." Gasps. An aunt covered her mouth. "You what?" Lena's voice trembled but remained clear. "I forged emails. I lied because I was afraid and ashamed." People stared at me, recalculating memories, past conversations, judgments. That was the social recontextualization moment. You could almost see it happening. Every past opinion quietly rearranging. Dialogue, exposure without revenge. Dad stepped forward. "I also need to admit something." He took a deep breath. "I used money from Emily's education fund over many years to help Lena without telling her." The room froze again. No yelling, no drama, just truth landing heavily. He looked at me. "We failed you." I didn't interrupt, didn't rescue them emotionally. I let silence do its work, because silence allows accountability to exist. An aunt finally asked me softly, "So you're really a doctor?" I smiled slightly. "I'm a trauma surgeon." Another wave of realization spread. People who pitied me now looked embarrassed. Sympathy reversed direction, without me saying a single accusatory word. That was the moment power fully shifted. Emotional reflection, I noticed something important. Revenge didn't feel explosive. It felt quiet, watching truth replace fiction without force, watching people understand on their own. No shouting required, no dramatic confrontation, just reality correcting itself. Aftermath conversations later that evening, relatives approached one by one. "I'm so sorry. We didn't know. I should have called you." I accepted apologies politely. Not warmly, not coldly, just neutrally. Because forgiveness and access are different things. The conversation with my parents after everyone left, we sat at the kitchen table again. The same 4 seats, 5 years older. Mom spoke first. We believed what was easier, Dad added quietly, and we didn't want to face what we'd done. I nodded. I know. He looked at me carefully. Can you forgive us? I answered honestly. I'm not angry anymore. Hope appeared in Mom's eyes. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. They both nodded, understanding the boundary. That was new and necessary. Time skip, healing a year passed. Life settled into something healthier. I visited occasionally, short dinners. Clear boundaries, no financial discussions, no emotional manipulation. Lena attended therapy. We spoke slowly, carefully rebuilding something fragile, not the old sister relationship. Something more honest. My parents stopped telling stories about who I used to be. They learned who I actually was, and that difference mattered. Healing ending, channel signature. Sometimes people ask if saving Lena changed everything. It didn't. What changed everything was truth becoming unavoidable. I didn't win by exposing anyone. I won the moment I stopped fighting to be believed, because eventually reality introduces itself. And when it does, it doesn't need volume. Just time. I have a life now filled with people who know me directly, not through someone else's story. Peace feels quieter than revenge, but it lasts longer. Final comment magnet, I want to ask you something honestly. If you were in my position, would you have forgiven them? Who do you think was truly responsible? The sister who lied, the parents who believed it, or the silence that allowed it to continue? And if your family believed a false story about you, would you fight to correct it, or walk away and let the truth surface on its own? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story stayed with you, there's another one waiting. So don't leave before you subscribe. It's a little token of appreciation. You may not believe, but it motivates us to keep going, bringing new stories for you every day. Thanks for watching, folks.